Another opportunity here. It might feel a little bit more complicated, but I hope that you don't come across that way. I just hope that you realize that there's just lots of small problems. And how do we solve a large problem? Start to identify and solve the small problems involved. So I have a quadratic. I recognize that 9x squared is my quadratic term. I'm going to solve this not by factoring. That's going to get messy. I'm going to factor it by completing the square. First step is add that constant to the other side, which starts to open up the opportunity to figure out what the perfect square is here. I would need to have a leading coefficient of an x squared in order to do that. So here's something that I have to do first. I need to divide through everything by 9. So I'm left with an x squared minus 6/9 x equals 4/9. And I can go ahead and eliminate that down and make that a 2/3. I just reduced it down. 6/9 is the same thing as 2/3. And I like working with smaller numbers if possible. Okay, what's the number that turns this partial trinomial into a perfect square? Well, actually, it is a trinomial, but into a perfect square trinomial? Well, I need to take this middle term, minus 2/3, divide by 2. That produces a negative 2/6, or a 1/3, negative 1/3, and then square that, and that produces a positive 1/9. I added a 1/9 to this equation, and I added it because I needed to come up with the right number to turn this trinomial into a perfect square trinomial. So I need to add it to the other side as well. Now I have what's going to turn into be a perfect square trinomial. And this is the number that I needed to choose in order for this to occur. And that's going to be a 1/3. So x minus 1/3 squared equals 5/9. Where did that 1/3 come from? Well, remember, I'm looking for a number that times itself produces a 1/9. 1/3 times 1/3 produces a 1/9. So that's where that 1/3 comes from. Wasn't magic. That's part of the numbers that we've been gotten used to over the term so far of how to discover this last term times this last term produces that term. So nothing magical with that, but that is something you need to work yourself through so that doesn't trip you up. All right, now I can square root both sides. X minus 1/3 equals plus or minus the square root of 5/9. Add the 1/3 to both sides. X equals 1/3 plus or minus the square root of 5/9. And I'm technically not done yet because this root 5/9, I know I'm working out of paper over here. The square root of 5/9 is also written as the square root of 5 over the square root of 9, which is written as the square root of 5/3. So now I have x equals 1/3 plus or minus the square root of 5/3. And I can write that a little bit more cleanly. 1 plus or minus root 5/3. Not really the solution of x that we're looking for, but regardless, it is our two solutions of x. One is 1 plus root 5/3. The other one's 1 minus root 5/3. And those are our solutions to this quadratic equation. Most solutions to quadratic equations are going to appear a little bit more convoluted and maybe complicated. And that's why we're developing additional skills, or actually merging our skills together in order to solve problems that have a little bit more of a complicated answer.